Hey everyone, Richard Gibbons here, Executive Director for Southwest MLS, and today I want to talk about some of the bylaws changes that are being voted on at the annual meeting, December 6th of 2023. As I mentioned, these are going to be voted on at that annual meeting. There is going to be a link in the blog where that's going to have more information where you can get access to these bylaws in full if you want to be able to see the full context of them. Also in the link down there, I'm going to link you to the information that you need about Southwest MLS proxy votes. So a participant in Southwest MLS are the only people that are allowed to vote, and participants are also known as the qualifying broker or the designated realtor. Now, just having a qualifying broker license does not qualify you to vote. If you have hung that qualifying broker under a different qualifying broker, then you're not eligible to vote, but the person that you've hung your license under is. So if you are a participant by this definition and you are not attending the annual meeting, please follow the link in the email that I'm going to show you in a second to assign your vote to somebody who is going to be there. We have to make sure that we have enough of a quorum in order to make this happen. So a little bit more about that, this is an email you should have received on Tuesday. You're going to receive this again on Friday, December 1st, as well as Monday and Tuesday, December 4th and 5th. We really need to have these in by about noon or so on Tuesday in order to make sure that everybody can be counted. And a key thing to point out here is that you're not actually voting when you do this. You are assigning your vote to someone else who's going to vote on your behalf. And the way that person votes, anybody who's assigned to them, their vote counts the same. They cast one vote, and them and everybody who's assigned to them by proxy counts for that vote. And then this is all the form looks like. It just says, you put your name in the first spot. So I, John Doe, a participant with Southwest MLS, assign my vote by proxy to Jane Doe, who is also a participant for the purposes of voting at 2023 annual meeting. You put in your MLS login. If you want a receipt of that proxy assignment, you can enter your email address there, and then otherwise a signature and hit submit. One more time, the link to this is going to be in the description of YouTube, as well as if you're looking at this on Flex, it's going to be right below the video, so it'll be there for you. Or keep an eye open for an email that either went out Tuesday the 28th, Friday the 1st, or Monday or Tuesday the 4th or 5th. All right, so let's get into some of the actual changes now, starting with GAAR. So the first one is a really simple one. It just clarifies that anytime it says board of directors or board in the bylaws, it is specifically referring to the GAAR board of directors. You're going to notice that when we get over to the Southwest MLS side, we did a similar thing there because we are two separate companies, but there's a lot of overlap, and there was some issues where the bylaws weren't exactly clear which board they were referring to. So in both cases, we added this verbiage to just make it perfectly clear that the verbiage for GAAR is talking about the GAAR board, and the verbiage for Southwest MLS is talking about the Southwest MLS board. It's just a clarifying change. Next up with GAAR is changing the requirements for an officer, for members who are looking to be to run for either president-elect, vice president, or treasurer. So it's only for those three positions. And if they do that, then they must fulfill a 2-year term on the board of directors. So as a section we just talked about, it'd be the GAAR board of directors. They must have served on at least one committee, and they must attend at least one meeting of an NAR or NMAR conference during their term as director. So, like I said, that's just adding those additional qualifying criteria to make sure that the officers that are running for that executive committee, which is president-elect, vice president, or treasurer, are well qualified for those positions. Then under duties of officers, we're just adding in vice president to the succession line. So in case both the president and president-elect are unable to fulfill the duties of president, the vice president would step in, which is a logical choice as far as succession goes. Now back to qualifying criteria, this actually makes it a little easier to run for the director positions to be on the board of directors. Previously, you had to be a member of GAAR for 3 years in order to run for a board of directors. The change here makes it where you just have to be a realtor member for 3 years and then a member of GAAR for 1 year. And then, of course, you have to meet the other criteria outlined in Section 1. And then this is the last change for GAAR. This is just whenever someone, if they are not placed on the slate by the nominating committee, there is a petition process that they can follow to challenge that. And previously, you can see it was written where there was 30 days for the nominating committee to present the slate, and then 30 days for the person to submit their petition. So what the GAAR board is doing here is making it where the nominating committee has to submit 45 days before. So that way there's a 15-day gap. So if a potential candidate needs to petition membership, they have a 15-day period to get that done, whereas previously they wouldn't have really had any time at all unless the nominating committee turned in their slate early. That's not something that has to be enacted very often, but still we wanted to make sure if a member wanted to exercise that option that they would have that. Now we're going to switch over to the Southwest MLS changes. The first thing is, as I mentioned before, we just clarified that the service of the board of directors of the service is sometimes referred to as just member of the board of directors throughout the bylaws. Now, I'm not going to point out every single one of those. There's like 6 or 7 places that we changed that, but it's the same purpose the entire way through. Now, this section looks like a lot, but let me explain to you what's happening here, and it's really not as bad as it sounds. So, previously, the bylaws had a provision in it that said that there could be no more than 3 subscribers on the board of directors. So earlier, I'd explained to you what a participant is. A subscriber is everybody else, so people who are not the head, designated realtor, or qualifying broker of an office. The rules were not super clear, or the bylaws were not super clear about who on the board of directors counted against that total. Did officers count? Did appointed directors account? And things like that. So, after some discussion, the board of directors said, hey, look, the intent is that we want to make sure that participants remain in control of the board of directors. And then additionally, there's been times in the past where subscribers were not allowed to run because of the interpretation that year that said that there was already too many subscribers on the board. So, what we've done in this section, the reason why there's so many red lines, is essentially making it where everybody who is on the board of directors, except for the GAAR president, counts towards the total number of participants versus subscribers, and saying that there should always be more participants than subscribers. It says right here, the members of the board of directors shall be a majority of participants. So that just makes it where there will always be a majority of participants on the board, but it counts everybody. So that way it makes it a lot clearer of what we're trying to actually accomplish here. And then we also added that no firm shall have more than 3 directors, including officers, on the board of directors, unless the result is due to appointment. And the only way that anybody would go more than 3 by appointment is if they had 40% of the membership or more. So that's a very, very, very high bar to meet. This section, it was just kind of left over from the days of when the vote for the directors would actually happen at the annual meeting. Now the vote for the directors is done electronically before we even get to the meeting, so there really isn't an opportunity to select nominees from the floor. So legal counsel actually recommended that we remove this section just to make it super clear that that's not really a possibility anymore because of the timing of elections and how they're done. Now this section, going back to the discussion about participants versus subscribers, if somebody changes from a participant to subscriber in the middle of their term, how do we handle that? And this is just adding that they will be allowed to finish their term until the next annual election process. The other thing we're adding in here, as you may have noticed over the last couple of years, there's not been a lot of open positions to run for the Southwest MLS Board of Directors. Now, earlier in the bylaws, there is a thing that basically states that the way this is supposed to work is every year we should have 2 open positions and 2 people rolling off. You know, sometimes that'll be filled by an incumbent, but it does at least give the opportunity for new blood to come in and have a total rotation on the board of directors as a healthy board of directors should. However, between how we were restricted by the bylaws and the way that people leaving middle of terms and things like that, it made it where this year we had no open positions for directors. Next year we're only going to have 1 open position for directors in 2024 unless someone leaves. And in 2025 we're looking at 5 open positions. And what this term does, or what this language does here, is it makes it where when we get to the election and we have those 5 people running, the way it'll work is whoever gets the most votes is going to have 3-year terms. So that'd be 2 people would get 3-year terms. The next 2 people would have 2-year terms, and then 1 person would have a 1-year term. And then that way it fixes our staggering issue and makes it where from the 2026 election on, it's always running like it's supposed to, where you constantly have those 2 open positions every single year, so people have the opportunity to get on the board of directors. And then finally is the one change that some might consider a major change. As we talked about earlier, every time we're wanting to make a change to the bylaws or even with elections for directors, we have this issue where we are always struggling to get 10% of participants to participate. And the way our bylaws are currently written is we have to hit 35% of subscribers represented and 10% of participants. To clarify real quickly, the 35% of subscribers represented. So when somebody votes as a participant, they are representing all of the subscribers that are underneath them. That has not been a high bar for us. On average, most of our elections, we usually end up hitting between 42 to 50% of subscribers represented. So that has not been a high bar. That has not been a problem to reach. The 10% of participant offices has been a continuous problem, and one that we've had to do some gymnastics to meet before. So the suggestion from legal counsel here is to just change that "and" to an "or" and make it where as long as 35% of subscribers are represented in the vote, then that is enough to get the elections and bylaws changes done. And that just comes to, we only get to do this once a year as far as the bylaws changes go at the annual meeting, and we need to stay as nimble as possible. And if we miss a vote because of a lack of quorum and we have to wait a whole nother year in order to make bylaws changes, that does not make for a very nimble MLS in a constantly changing industry. So that is all the bylaws changes. Like I said, I just want to take a moment and go through each of those for you. I know this video ends up being a little bit longer than what you guys are used to hearing from me, but we always want to make sure we're super transparent and super clear about changes like this. Of course, if you have any questions at all, me and Kent are both available to answer those questions about these bylaws changes. If you know somebody who's on the board of directors, you can also reach out to them or any of your officers as well. And just ask any questions you have. This is your association. This is your MLS. These are your decisions to make. So if you have any questions or concerns, we certainly want to hear about them, preferably before the annual meeting so we have time to address those. Because at the annual meeting, just for the sake of time, all these changes are going to be presented as being passed in one motion. So if you have issues or concerns, we really want to address those up front. So please reach out to us. You can always reach out, down here at the bottom, support@swmls.com or 505-843-8833, and we'll certainly get you in contact with whoever you need to talk to. So last time, just selfless MLS participants, please make sure you assign your proxy if you're not going to be at the annual meeting, and then, of course, reach out with questions. Thank you all, and have a wonderful day.